Ulysses S. Grant was the 18th President of the United States, serving 2 terms from 1869 to 1877. During his presidency, Grant focused on rebuilding the country after the Civil War and implementing Reconstruction policies to protect the rights of newly freed African Americans. It was during Grant's presidency that the 15th Amendment to the Constitution was passed. This granted African American men the right to vote. President Grant implemented several Reconstruction policies to protect African Americans and help them transition from slaves into citizens. Some key Reconstruction policies implemented by Grant's administration include the Enforcement Tax. These were a series of laws passed in 1870 and 1871 that were designed to protect the civil rights of African Americans and enforce the 15th Amendment by utilizing federal troops to prevent violence and intimidation by white supremacists. Another policy was the Civil Rights Act of 1875. This allowed African Americans equal access to public accommodations, such as hotels, restaurants, and theaters. It also prohibited racial discrimination in jury selection. The Freedmen's Agency was established in 1865, and its goal was to assist newly freed African Americans during the Reconstruction period. It did so by providing food, clothing, and medical care, and helping separated families reconnect. It did not receive much political support, however. Originally proposed by Lincoln, Congress refused to provide funding for it, so it became a part of the Department of War. When Congress tried to renew the charter for the Bureau under Andrew Johnson, he vetoed the bill. A Republican-led Congress was eventually able to override his veto, but by 1869 Southern Democrats deprived the Bureau of most of its funding. In 1970, the agency, whose primary workplace was in the South, was on the receiving end of KKK attacks. The program abruptly ended in 1872. These were some policies that were aimed to help African Americans in the aftermath of the Civil War. Most of their effects were circumvented by policies that would not be undone for another 90 years. The Indian Appropriations Act of 1871 was a law signed by President Ulysses S. Grant that ended the treaty system with Native American tribes and led to the forced relocation of many Native Americans to reservations. Before this act, the federal government recognized their sovereignty and entered into treaties with Native American tribes. The Indian Appropriations Act of 1871 effectively ended this system by prohibiting the federal government from making any further treaties with Native American tribes. It also declared that Native Americans were subject to the laws of the United States, effectively depriving them of their sovereignty. Under the act, Native American tribes were required to relocate to reservations, which were often located in remote and undesirable areas. Many Native Americans resisted this relocation and were forcibly removed from their lands by federal troops. Their way of life was disrupted, and many were subjected to poverty, disease, and other challenges on the reservations. This act remains a controversial and highly disputed part of U.S. history and is often seen as a major injustice against Native American communities. Ulysses S. Grant signed the Yellowstone National Park Protection Act on March 1, 1872, establishing the first national park in the United States. The act set aside more than 2 million acres in Wyoming and Montana for the preservation of the wild animals and game therein and the enjoyment of the same in their natural state. The park's creation helped to preserve the region's natural beauty, unique ecosystem, geothermal features, and ecological balance for future generations. The park's establishment also had several economic and social impacts. It boosted tourism to the region, as people from around the world came to see the park's natural wonders, and this helped stimulate economic growth and development in the surrounding area. Yellowstone also kick-started the nation's conservation effort, as it helped to raise awareness of the importance of protecting natural resources and preserving the environment. During Grant's presidency, the Transcontinental Railroad was completed. Economically, this allowed the movement of goods and people across the country, which helped stimulate economic growth and development, especially in the West. Socially, the railroad brought new people and ideas to the Western region and helped facilitate the growth of cities and towns. This helped to develop the West at the cost of Native American communities that had to give up their land to white settlers. Politically, the railroad had a unifying effect on the country as it served as a symbol of the country's progress and national unity by connecting both coasts. The Coinage Act of 1873, also known as the Crime of 1873, was a law signed by President Ulysses S. Grant that demonetized silver and caused a financial crisis in the United States. Before the act, both gold and silver were considered legal tender in the United States and could be used to pay debts. Afterward, all new coins had to be made from either gold or gold-silver alloy. This act led to a contraction of the money supply as there was not enough gold to back all the currency in circulation. This caused deflation, or a decline in prices, which hurt farmers and other debtors who has taken out loans when prices were higher. The act also contributed to a recession in the United States and was unpopular with many Americans, especially those in the West and South who relied on silver mining and production. It is often seen as a contributing factor to the financial panic of 1873, which affected the United States and other countries around the world. Many banks and businesses went bankrupt. Farmers were unable to repay their debts, which later gave rise to the populist movement. The Republican Party, which was in power at the time, lost popular support, and the Greenback Party gained popularity as they advocated for the expansion of the money supply through the issuance of paper money. President Grant's presidency was marked by several scandals that left a stain on his reputation and legacy. There was the whiskey ring, which involved the illegal diversion of tax revenues from the sale of whiskey to the pockets of government officials. This scandal was uncovered in 1875 and included several of Grant's close associates, including his private secretary. There was the credit mobilier scandal, which involved the manipulation of stock. The scandal was uncovered in 1872 and implemented by several Congress members. There was the Indian ring scandal, which involved the embezzlement of government funds intended for the benefit of Native American tribes. This was uncovered in 1876 and involved numerous government officials and contractors. There was also the gold ring scandal. This was the illegal manipulation of the gold market in an attempt to influence the value of government bonds. The scandal was uncovered in 1869 and implicated several Grant's associates. The mismanagement and corruption in Grant's administration tarnished his reputation. While he was innocent of these scandals, his failure to effectively handle his administration and associates contributed to a loss of public trust.